Hey everyone, we're back for another episode of Orbital Progressions, essentially. And we are going to be taking a look at Emma Stone's chart today and rolling through a different time periods in her life, three different ones. And so remember, yet again, we are just taking a succinct look at the aspects being formed with the orbital progressions at the time of each event. So we're not going too far into detail. We're just looking at basically like the hits being made to it, right? So for this first chart, what we're looking at is the day SuperBad premiered. And this was the movie that launched her into recognition and fame. And so, if we start with this first house over here, we can see that her orbital progressions, right? I'm going to refer to them as OP. This OP part of fortune and OP sun, which again, the OP sun and secondary sun, secondary progression sun are moved at the same rate. So we can see these two planets here. And they are actually making an exact sextile to her natal MC at 2 degrees in the 11th house. And they are also being trined by the transiting MC. And we can see that the vertex, her natal vertex, is in a trine with them as well, right? And the destiny point, the vertex is a destiny point, as we know. Let's see what else is going. Oh, and they are also in opposition to Jupiter in Gemini. And they are, they're sextile to Pallas here in the third house. And she actually did win an award for this, which we will circle back around on, for a fresh new face popping onto the scene, right? So that kind of makes sense. If we look at this OP Mars in the fifth, and I have to apologize, Canva is not letting me keep the cursor on in this presenter mode. So I'm pointing it out with the cursor, but I don't know if it's actually going to be in the recording. So I will try to say the houses as much as possible while I'm going through these. But we can see OP Mercury, let's look at OP Mercury here. And that is being sextiled by Uranus. And it would have been an exact sextile actually while she was filming this. And then we can look at OP Mars here in her fifth house. Of course, that's the house of acting. And that is being trined by transiting Jupiter in the first. And it's actually just pushed through a square with her natal Neptune, which represents like breakthrough, right? A time of breakthrough. So what else do we got here? We have this OP Venus in the 12th, right? Which is another house that we see films and acting. And that is being sextiled by the transiting nodes, or sextile, we could say sextile trined by the transiting nodes. And then moving on to talking about the nodes. So, within pretty recently, I have realized that actually, as part of the orbital progressions method, we actually move the nodes, right? And we move them a degree a year backwards. And this is not in the book because it was published before I realized this, but I will this will be listed in my book section on my website so you can see exactly what the rate of movement for those would be. So, anyway, we're looking at the nodes and the OP nodes specifically, I should say. And so, another kind of side note to the nodes is the years, for the amount of years that I've been really doing a lot of research and looking at hundreds of charts, something that I've recognized with the nodes is they often actually seem to be working in reverse, right? Things that you would be like, oh, you'd see that with the north node. You actually see it with the south node and vice versa. So I've started looking at the nodes as just a nodal axis that we know is going to bring changes, right? I could speak a lot more to that, but that's actually another topic and for another time. But if we look at the OP nodes, right, the orbital progressed nodes, well, then boom, immediately something stands out with them. And we can see that the sun is actually exactly conjunct her south node, right, in orbital progressions. And also, we know that she won an award. Remember, I mentioned she won an award for Best New Face and Award to the Sun, right? So she would actually win an award for this. And at the time of this premiere, we can see that there was a mega stellium, right? She had the Sun at 24 degrees, Venus at 25 degrees, Mercury at 26 degrees, and Saturn at 27 degrees in the sign of Leo, right? Drama, acting, and with that south node, right? And we also could say that this is actually a case for the midpoints as well, because this happens to be the midpoint between her natal sun and natal Jupiter. Another topic. But let's see, what else was there? We see that transiting Neptune was conjunct the North Node, OP, North Node. And that was, exactly conjunct while she was filming this. So, yeah, so there's the case for orbital progressions in this chart. And now we'll move on to our next chart, which is actually the first day of filming for La La Land. And another thing, something that I've started doing on the backside of looking at so many movies and actors and like looking at timings of progressions is I've started to look at the first day of filming for movies when I'm looking at either the movie itself or the actors or actresses, because it's actually very telling as to the fate of the actor, actresses slash movie. And so, something that we kind of notice right away again is there is a large stellium here around this orbitally progressed south node, or we could just call it the nodal axis, right? And another thing that we notice yet again, even though it's years later, is the sun's conjunction to this node. And she actually went on to win an Academy Award for this movie, right? So that checks out and makes sense, right? And the movie actually, it was a movie that got 14 nominations, I think, and that it beat the record for any movie for nominations for an Academy Award. Let's see what else we got. We have OP Mercury, right? The ruler of her career house, the 10th house, is conjunct this north node. And both of these are sextiling her ascendant at 17 degrees. And let's see what else. They're also both in a sextile with transiting Uranus in the fifth and that OP Mars in the fifth. Let's see what else we got. We've got the OP Sun part of fortune combination that is trining this progressed Mars, OP Mars in the fifth. And they're actually in a kite pattern with the OP nodal axis, right? Like we can see that within the yellow points on this chart. And then also there was a lunar eclipse that was the eclipse just prior to this, and that was at 14 degrees in Libra, her 11th house. So that actually was factoring into that kite formation as well, right? So there's that. So then we're going to move to the third and final chart for Emma Stone. And that actually is for the birth of her first baby. It's set to the day that her baby was born. And then also she was married within like a year of this. So we can look at these OP transits for kind of both of those, right? So when we're looking at the first thing, we can see, if we're talking about, her marriage, we see that this OP Venus is at 0 degrees of her first house, and it is opposing Jupiter, which, in Vedic astrology, that is actually the husband. And it is also in a grand trine. The OP Venus is in a grand trine to her natal Mars at 0 degrees of the fifth house, and her natal vertex at 2 degrees in Leo, right? Up here in her ninth house. When we also look at her, we can look at her OP moon, right? Representing motherhood. Well, that is conjunct Pluto, right? Birth. And it is also, the OP moon is also in a sextile / trine to her natal nodes, right? And we can see that this OP Mars at 17 degrees in the fifth house is being sextiled by transiting Jupiter. And actually in Vedic, Jupiter is children as well. And then it is in, let's see, a trine with her ascendant and also her progressed sun at 16 degrees, and the sun is children as well. Going back to her marriage, we can see that her orbitally progressed Juno at 6 degrees in her 10th house, which is, of course, marriage status, is in a grand trine with her natal Neptune and also transiting Uranus. And so this is interesting because they were actually planning on having a wedding, but surprise, COVID hit and their wedding was canceled. And how very Uranus in the sixth and Neptune, right? Is that speaking, for representing COVID, right? But their marriage happened anyway. Just in a more private ceremony. And then if we come to we could look at this orbitally progressed north node at 10 degrees in her third house is having a conjunction with transiting Saturn, right? Which is maturation and commitment, right? So that checks out. And we can also see that she's got OP Mercury at 12 degrees in the fourth house, right? So family. And that is, uh, Mercury is the ruler of her seventh house, right? And so relationship, marriage. And this OP Mercury at this time is conjunct her natal north node. Um, and then it is also trining her OP moon back at 13 degrees in Scorpio and her natal Pluto, which again is birth. So that's it on Emma Stone's chart as far as orbital progressions are concerned. And I'll see you next time for the next chart. Thanks. Have a good one.